February 27th, 1933. The Reichstag building in Berlin is engulfed in flames. By the next day, President Hindenburg signs the Reichstag Fire Decree, suspending civil liberties across Germany. In the hours and days that follow, arrests begin. Within weeks, thousands of Hitler's political opponents disappear into a new kind of detention facility. Places that operate outside German law, beyond judicial review, under the control of state police and Nazi paramilitary forces. But here's what most people don't know. The concentration camp wasn't invented that night. The idea had been developing for months, refined in secret meetings, debated in Nazi circles, modeled on detention systems from other nations. The camps didn't emerge from chaos. They were designed, planned, engineered by specific men with specific goals. You know where it ended. Auschwitz, the gas chambers, the systematic murder of millions. But how did it begin? Who first proposed holding German citizens without trial in camps beyond legal oversight? Where did the Nazi leadership even get the idea? What were these facilities originally meant to accomplish? And how did that original purpose mutate into something far more sinister? Tonight, we trace the true origin of the Nazi concentration camp system, not the propaganda version the Nazis themselves told, but the actual development, the influences, the planners, the debates, the decisions. We'll meet the architects who built this machinery of repression and follow the deliberate process by which a modern European nation constructed a parallel detention system designed to operate beyond the rule of law. This is the story of how an idea became infrastructure, how planning became policy, how a system was born. November 1918. Germany loses World War I. The Kaiser abdicates. The new Weimar Republic emerges from chaos, weak, unstable, despised by extremists on both left and right. In the streets, communists and nationalists fight for control. The Spartacist uprising in Berlin, the Bavarian Soviet Republic, right-wing Freikorps, paramilitary units crushing leftist movements with extreme violence. Germany feels like a nation at war with itself. And some Nazi thinkers are paying attention to how other countries handle political threats. The term concentration camp wasn't a Nazi invention. The British used it during the Boer War in South Africa, 1900 to 1902, concentrating Boer civilians to prevent them from supporting guerrilla fighters. The Spanish used camps in Cuba during their colonial wars. These weren't death camps, they were detention facilities for civilian populations deemed security threats. But there's a closer, more influential model: the Soviet Union. After the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, Lenin and the Cheka, the Soviet secret police, established labor camps to detain political enemies, class opponents, and anyone deemed a threat to the revolution. By the 1920s, the Soviet system of camps is growing into what will become the Gulag. Nazi ideologues watch this development carefully. They view Bolshevism as their mortal enemy, yet they recognize the effectiveness of the Soviet approach. Use camps to isolate political opponents, break resistance, and terrorize the population into compliance. Adolf Hitler himself absorbs these lessons during his imprisonment after the failed beer hall putsch of 1923. In Landsberg prison, he writes Mein Kampf, outlining his vision for a racially pure Germany dominated by a single party with absolute power. He's explicit. His enemies, communists, social democrats, Jews, must be eliminated from German political life. But Hitler doesn't yet specify the mechanism. That comes from others. Enter Heinrich Himmler. Born in 1900 to a middle-class Bavarian family, Himmler is an unlikely architect of terror. He's educated, meticulous, obsessed with order and Germanic mythology. He joins the Nazi Party in 1923 and quickly distinguishes himself not through charisma, he has none, but through organizational ability. By 1929, Himmler commands the SS, Hitler's elite bodyguard unit. It's small, only 280 men. But Himmler has ambitions. He envisions the SS as a racial aristocracy, an ideological vanguard that will reshape Germany through discipline, loyalty, and ruthless efficiency. Himmler studies power structures obsessively. He reads about the Oprichnina, Ivan the Terrible's personal security force in 16th century Russia. He examines the Jesuits' organizational hierarchy. He researches how the Cheka operates in the Soviet Union. And he asks a critical question. How do you neutralize political opposition in a way that's permanent, systematic, and beyond legal challenge? The answer begins forming in his mind. Camps, not prisons, which require trials and sentences. Not executions, which create martyrs, but camps, extrajudicial detention facilities where enemies can be held indefinitely, broken psychologically, and released only when they are no longer threats. But Himmler isn't working alone. Reinhard Heydrich joins the SS in 1931. He's brilliant, ruthless, and totally amoral. Exactly the kind of operative Himmler needs. Heydrich helps develop the conceptual framework. The camps should serve dual purposes. First, terror. Their existence intimidates potential opponents. Second, transformation. Prisoners who submit can be released as examples of Nazi power to convert enemies into obedient citizens. Meanwhile, another figure waits in the wings. Theodor Eicke. A volatile, brutal man with a history of mental instability and violent outbursts, Eicke has been an SS member since 1928. He has no sophisticated ideology, but he understands violence and control. Himmler will recognize him as the perfect instrument, someone who can implement the brutal reality of the system the planners are designing. By 1932, the ideas are circulating in Nazi leadership circles. But Hitler isn't yet in power. The planning remains theoretical. Then comes January 30th, 1933. Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany, and the theoretical becomes operational. January 30th, 1933. Hitler takes office, but his power is constrained. The Nazis don't control the Reichstag. The German legal system remains intact. Opposition parties still function. The Communist Party alone holds 81 seats in parliament. Hermann Göring, newly appointed Minister of the Interior for Prussia, faces an immediate problem. How do you consolidate power when your opponents have legal protection? Göring's first move is administrative genius or catastrophe, depending on your perspective. He issues an order on February 22nd, establishing an auxiliary police force of 50,000 men drawn from the SA, Brown Shirts, and SS. These aren't trained law enforcement. They're Nazi paramilitaries now given state authority to arrest and detain. It's a preview of what's coming, the fusion of party and state power. But Göring's approach is chaotic. The SA starts arresting communists and dumping them in makeshift detention facilities, basements, warehouses, empty barracks. There's no coordination, no standardization. Some prisoners are beaten and released, others disappear. The SA commanders operate these facilities as personal fiefdoms. Himmler watches this chaos from Bavaria, where he serves as police president of Munich. And he sees an opportunity. In the days following the Reichstag fire and the emergency decree of February 28th, Himmler begins planning something more systematic. He's chosen the location. Dachau, a small town 16 kilometers northwest of Munich. There's an abandoned munitions factory there with existing barracks, walls, and infrastructure. It can be operational within days. March 20th, 1933. Himmler holds a press conference, an extraordinary moment. He announces the creation of the Dachau concentration camp publicly. He invites journalists to report on it. This seems counterintuitive. Why advertise a detention facility for political enemies? Because terror requires publicity. Himmler understands that the camp's power isn't just what happens inside. It's what people fear might happen inside. By announcing Dachau's existence, he sends a message to every communist, social democrat, and trade unionist in Bavaria. We can take you, hold you indefinitely, and no court will protect you. It's psychological warfare conducted through administrative procedure. Himmler's proposal is revolutionary. The camp will be administered solely by the SS, operating under his direct authority as Bavaria's police chief. It will hold political prisoners under protective custody, Schutzhaft, a legal mechanism borrowed from Weimar emergency laws that allowed temporary detention without trial. But Himmler's version of protective custody is different. Under Weimar, it was meant to protect individuals from mob violence by briefly detaining them. Himmler inverts it. Now it's protection for the state from its enemies, with no time limit and no judicial review. The legal framework is deliberately vague. Who determines who's an enemy? The police, which Himmler controls. Who reviews these decisions? No one. How long can someone be held? Indefinitely. Can families visit? At the commandant's discretion. Can lawyers intervene? No. It's a system designed to operate in a legal void. But who will run this facility? Himmler appoints Hilmar Weckerle as Dachau's first commandant. Weckerle is an SS officer with administrative experience but limited vision for what the camp should become. He'll serve as a placeholder while the system takes shape. March 22, 1933. The first transport reaches Dachau. 200 prisoners, mostly communists, arrested after the Reichstag fire. They're marched through the gates of the former munitions factory. No wrought iron motto yet, just barbed wire and watchtowers. Inside, conditions are brutal but disorganized. Prisoners are registered, assigned to barracks, put to work on meaningless labor. Guards beat them for infractions both real and invented. Rations are deliberately insufficient, but there's no systematic approach yet, just improvised cruelty. The chaos at Dachau mirrors the chaos across Germany. By spring 1933, somewhere between 60 and 100 makeshift camps operate nationwide. Some hold a dozen prisoners, others hold hundreds. The SA runs most of them as private torture chambers, and that's when Himmler makes his next critical move. June 1933. Scandals emerge from Dachau. Prisoners are dying from beatings and torture. Word spreads. Even some Nazi officials worry the brutality is counterproductive, generating sympathy for victims rather than fear. Himmler needs someone who can brutalize effectively while maintaining administrative control. Someone who can systematize the violence. June 26, 1933. Theodor Eicke becomes Dachau's second commandant. Eicke is an unlikely choice for such a crucial position. He's recently been released from a psychiatric hospital after threatening a political opponent. He has no administrative experience running detention facilities. He's known primarily for volatility and violence. But Himmler sees exactly what he needs. Someone without scruples, someone who won't hesitate, someone who views prisoners as enemies deserving punishment rather than citizens deserving rights. And Eicke delivers. Within months of taking command, Eicke produces a document that will define the concentration camp system, the Disciplinary and Penal Code for the prisoner camp, dated October 1st, 1933. It's essentially an operations manual for running a detention facility beyond legal oversight. The document is remarkable for its bureaucratic precision. It categorizes offenses into 3 levels, each with specified punishments. Minor infractions, failing to salute properly, speaking during work, merit 8 days of solitary confinement on bread and water. Moderate offenses, possessing money, refusing work orders, bring 25 lashes and indefinite solitary confinement. Severe violations, physical resistance, attempting escape, inciting other prisoners, are punishable by summary execution. But here's the crucial detail. The commandant determines guilt. No trial, no defense, no appeal. Eicke also establishes regulations for guards. SS personnel who show softness toward prisoners face disciplinary action themselves. Guards are instructed to view prisoners as subhuman enemies of Germany who deserve no compassion. This psychological conditioning is deliberate. Eicke is engineering not just a facility, but a mindset. The daily routine at Dachau is designed around three principles: exhaustion, humiliation, and unpredictability. Prisoners wake before dawn for roll call, appel, standing in formation for hours while guards count and recount. The counting serves no practical purpose. It's a ritual of control. Then comes work, digging ditches that are later filled in, moving piles of stones from one end of the yard to another and back, scrubbing floors that are already clean. The labor is deliberately pointless. Its purpose isn't production, but degradation. Meals are starvation rations, watery soup, a piece of bread. Prisoners lose weight rapidly. The hunger is calculated. Weak prisoners are easier to control. Punishments are arbitrary. A guard might beat a prisoner for walking too slowly. Another guard might beat the same prisoner for walking too quickly. There's no way to avoid punishment, and that's intentional. The unpredictability creates constant anxiety, breaking down psychological resistance. Eicke also introduces the color-coded badge system. Political prisoners wear red triangles. Asocials, vagrants, homeless, petty criminals wear black. Later, other colors are added: green for criminal prisoners, purple for Jehovah's Witnesses, pink for homosexuals. The badges serve multiple purposes. They categorize, stigmatize, and create hierarchies among prisoners that prevent unified resistance. But Eicke's most important innovation is documentation. Every punishment is recorded in logs. Every prisoner is registered with an entry date, number, and category. Every death is certified with a cause, however fabricated. Guards file reports. Administrators maintain files. The camp operates like a bureaucracy, not a lawless dungeon. Why does this matter? Because documentation creates the appearance of legitimacy. The camp isn't chaos. It's a system with rules, procedures, and records. That makes it defensible if questioned. It also makes it scalable. By summer 1933, Dachau holds over 4,000 prisoners. Eicke's procedures are proving effective at maintaining control while processing large numbers, and Himmler is taking notes. The camps across Germany remain chaotic. The SA facilities are undisciplined torture chambers, but Dachau is becoming a model. The question isn't whether this will spread. The question is when. June 30th, 1934, the night of the long knives. Hitler orders a purge of SA leadership, assassinating Ernst Röhm and dozens of other brown shirt commanders. The official justification is preventing a coup, but the real reason is political consolidation. The SA, massive, violent, unpredictable, threatens Hitler's control and terrifies the conservative elites whose support he needs. The SS carries out the killings. Himmler's men prove their loyalty through murder, and Hitler rewards them with expanded authority. In the purge's aftermath, the SS absorbs the SA's power, including control of the concentration camps. July 1934. Himmler promotes Theodor Eicke from Dachau, commandant, to inspector of concentration camps and commander of the SS Death's Head Units, Totenkopfverbände, specially recruited SS battalions tasked with guarding camps. Eicke's mandate is clear: replicate Dachau across Germany. Institutionalize the procedures. This is the critical moment when the concentration camp evolves from scattered detention facilities into an integrated network. Eicke begins systematically. He shuts down most of the chaotic SA camps and consolidates prisoners into fewer, larger SS-administered facilities. He creates training programs for SS guards, teaching them to view prisoners as racial and political enemies undeserving of basic human dignity. He establishes uniform regulations. Every camp follows Dachau's disciplinary code. He develops administrative procedures, prisoner registration, work assignments, medical examinations, however cursory, punishment logs. The camps start to resemble factories, not producing goods, but processing people. Eicke also designs the physical layout that becomes standard. The Dachau camps are built in similar configurations, an administrative area with commandant's office and SS quarters, a prisoner compound with barracks, roll call square and workshops, perimeter walls or fences with watchtowers, separate areas for punishment cells and execution grounds. This standardization has profound implications. It means guards can transfer between camps without retraining. It means procedures are predictable and replicable. It means the system can expand without losing administrative coherence. But the expansion takes time. The model camps of the new SS system don't all appear at once. By 1935, standardization is underway, but the major new facilities are still being planned. Sachsenhausen opens in July 1936, purpose-built near Berlin according to Eicke's specifications. Buchenwald opens on July 15, 1937, in central Germany. These aren't repurposed buildings. They're concentration camps designed from the ground up to implement Eicke's system. And who ends up in these camps? The categories are expanding. Initially, prisoners were mostly communists and social democrats, political opponents. By the mid-1930s, the camps are holding Jehovah's Witnesses who refuse to give the Hitler salute or serve in the military. Homosexual men arrested under paragraph 175 of the German Criminal Code. Roma people labeled asocials. Repeat criminal offenders. Anyone deemed a threat to the Nazi vision of social order. The legal basis remains protective custody, Schutzhaft, but it's now administered by the Gestapo, the secret state police that Himmler also controls. The process is simple. The Gestapo issues a protective custody order. The target is arrested and transported to a camp. No charges are filed. No trial occurs. No release date is set. Families receive no notification of where their loved ones are held. No lawyer can challenge the detention. No court can order release. The prisoner simply vanishes into the system. Yet here's a crucial detail about the camps in this period. They're still presented as corrective institutions. The official propaganda claims they're educating misguided Germans, teaching them to become loyal citizens. Prisoners who demonstrate ideological transformation can theoretically be released, and many are. Between 1933 and 1937, thousands of political prisoners are released after months or years of detention. They return home traumatized, broken, and thoroughly intimidated. They spread stories of what happens inside, functioning as living warnings. This is the system operating as Himmler designed it, not primarily to kill, but to terrorize society through the threat of indefinite detention beyond legal protection. The camps in this period are brutal, with significant death rates from disease, malnutrition, and violence. But they're not yet extermination facilities. That evolution is still ahead. What exists by 1937 is the infrastructure, the administrative apparatus, the trained guard force, the standardized procedures, the legal void in which camps operate. The machinery is built and tested. It's ready to scale. And soon, it's given symbols that will become infamous. In the late 1930s, as Dachau is reconstructed and expanded, the wrought iron gate appears. Arbeit macht frei. Work sets you free. The lie is now literally inscribed on the entrance. The question is, scale to what purpose? Who were the men who created this system? Not just implemented it, but conceived it, refined it, and expanded it. We've met some already. But understanding the origin of the concentration camp system requires understanding the ideology and psychology of its architects. Heinrich Himmler is the system's chief architect. By 1936, Hitler appoints him Reichsführer SS and Chief of German Police, consolidating all police power, both regular and secret, under his control. This gives Himmler unprecedented authority. He commands the SS, the Gestapo, and the concentration camps. But Himmler isn't a sadist driven by personal cruelty. He's a true believer in Nazi racial ideology, convinced that Germany's survival requires eliminating racial and political enemies. He views the concentration camps as instruments of racial hygiene, tools for purifying German society. Himmler is obsessed with managerial efficiency. He reads reports meticulously. He visits camps personally to inspect procedures. He demands detailed statistics on prisoner numbers, categories, death rates. For Himmler, the camps are a challenge in administrative scalability, how to detain, control, and exploit tens of thousands of enemies with minimal resources. His answer is systematization, hence the standardized procedures, the bureaucratic documentation, the hierarchical administration. Reinhard Heydrich, meanwhile, serves as Himmler's operational mastermind. As head of the SD Security Service, and later the Reich Security Main Office, Heydrich oversees the intelligence apparatus that identifies who goes to the camps. Heydrich is perhaps the most dangerous because he combines ideological commitment with cold rationality. He develops the conceptual framework for categorizing enemies, political opponents, racial undesirables, social deviants. He establishes the procedures by which the Gestapo issues protective custody orders. He's the bureaucratic brain behind the machinery. Then there's Theodor Eicke, the man who gave the system its brutal operational form. Eicke is less concerned with ideology than with power and control. He's the one who institutionalized cruelty, who established the culture of violence among guards, who ensured that camps break prisoners psychologically as well as physically. Eicke creates the SS Death's Head units, recruiting and training guards specifically for camp duty. He selects for men who are young, physically fit, and ideologically committed, or at least willing to treat prisoners as subhuman. The training emphasizes absolute obedience and emotional hardness. Showing compassion is weakness. Prisoners are enemies who deserve no mercy. But there are other figures crucial to the system's development. Oswald Pohl joins the SS in 1933 and quickly rises to manage its economic affairs. He sees the camps as potential sources of labor and profit. In 1939, Pohl establishes the SS Main Economic and Administrative Office, WWII, which eventually oversees all concentration camps. Under Pohl's administration, the camps shift toward labor exploitation. Prisoners become economic assets to be worked until they're expended. This introduces a new philosophy. The camps aren't just for detention and terror. They're for extracting value. Richard Glucks serves as Eicke's deputy and eventually succeeds him as inspector of concentration camps in 1939. Glucks is a bureaucrat, not a visionary, but his competent administration ensures the system runs smoothly even as it expands massively during the war. These men share certain characteristics. They're educated, Heydrich and Himmler especially. They're ambitious, they're drawn to power and organization, and historians continue to debate this. They're capable of viewing mass detention and suffering as administrative problems to be solved through procedural management. They're not psychopaths in a clinical sense, though their actions were monstrous. They're people who made choices to build and operate a system designed to operate beyond law, morality, and human compassion. Their philosophy can be summarized in a few principles. 1. The camps serve the racial state. Germany must be purified of racial and ideological enemies. The camps are tools for this purification. 2. Law is what serves the state, not what limits it. Traditional legal protections are obstacles. The camps operate in a deliberately created legal void where the SS has absolute authority. 3. Administrative efficiency matters. The system should run smoothly, with clear procedures, documentation, and hierarchies. Chaos is wasteful. Systematization enables control. 4. Terror requires visibility. The camps must be known to exist, so the threat of detention intimidates potential opponents. But the details of what happens inside should be vague enough to fuel fear. 5. Prisoners are not individuals, but categories. They're not people with names and rights. They're political enemies, racial undesirables, social deviants. This dehumanization is built into every aspect of the system, from the color-coded badges to the replacement of names with numbers. By 1938, this philosophy is fully embedded in the concentration camp system. The infrastructure exists, the procedures are standardized, the personnel are trained and deployed. And then comes a test of the system's capacity. Kristallnacht, November 9th to 10th, 1938. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Nazi paramilitary forces and mobs attacked Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues across Germany and Austria. Over 1,000 synagogues burn, tens of thousands of Jewish businesses are destroyed. At least 91 Jews are murdered. Then comes the second wave, mass arrests. In the days following Kristallnacht, the Gestapo arrests approximately 30,000 Jewish men. They're given no charges, no trials. They're simply swept up in coordinated raids targeting Jewish communities nationwide. This is the largest mass detention operation the Nazi state has yet conducted. And it's a test. Can the concentration camp system absorb 30,000 prisoners suddenly? The answer reveals both the system's capacity and its limitations. Dachau, Buchenwald, and Sachsenhausen are overwhelmed. Prisoners are crammed into barracks designed for hundreds, now holding thousands. Sanitation collapses. Disease spreads rapidly. Guards increase violence to maintain control as the camps strain beyond capacity. But the system doesn't break. It adapts. Eicke and his administrators implement emergency procedures, expand barracks, establish new roll call procedures for larger populations, increase guard shifts, ration food even further. The camps become more brutal. Dozens of Jewish prisoners die within weeks from beatings, disease, and exposure. But they remain operational. And here's what Nazi leadership learns. The infrastructure can scale. With modifications, more camps, more guards, more administrative staff, the system can process tens of thousands, perhaps more. Most Kristallnacht arrestees are released within weeks or months, but only under specific conditions. Their families must surrender property, sign over businesses, and commit to emigrating from Germany. The camps function as pressure mechanisms, forcing Jews to abandon everything and leave. But emigration requires somewhere to go. And by 1938, the world is closing its doors. The Evian Conference in July 1938, convened specifically to address the refugee crisis, ends with delegates expressing sympathy, but most nations refusing to admit more refugees. The Nazis take note. If Jews cannot leave, then what? The question will be answered over the next few years. But first, the system must expand geographically. March 1938. Germany annexes Austria, the Anschluss. Austrian communists, social democrats, Jews, and intellectuals are targeted immediately. Austria's prisons can't hold them all. The Nazis need more capacity. August 8, 1938. Mauthausen concentration camp begins operations near Linz, Austria. Prisoners transferred from Dachau start constructing the camp itself. Unlike earlier camps repurposed from existing structures, Mauthausen is purpose-built. It's constructed above a granite quarry, an industrial site that will become integral to its function. This represents an evolution in planning. Earlier camps like Dachau were primarily detention and terror facilities. Mauthausen is designed from the beginning to combine detention with forced labor exploitation. Prisoners will work the quarry, producing granite for Nazi monumental architecture, while being worked to death. The camp's architecture reflects this purpose. The infamous Stairs of Death, 186 steps from the quarry to the camp, become an execution method. Prisoners carry heavy granite blocks up the stairs. Those who collapse are beaten or pushed off the cliff. May 1939. Ravensbrück opens as the primary women's concentration camp north of Berlin. Its establishment reflects another expansion: Nazi persecution of women deemed political enemies, social deviants, or racial undesirables. By September 1939, when Germany invades Poland and World War II begins, the concentration camp system has achieved full operational maturity. It consists of 6 main camps: Dachau, Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald, Mauthausen, Flossenbürg, and Ravensbrück, plus several smaller facilities. Before the war, the system held approximately 25,000 prisoners. The administration is hierarchical and efficient. The inspector of concentration camps reports to Himmler through the SS main office. Each camp has a commandant, administrative staff, guard forces from the death's head units, and detailed procedures for registration, labor assignment, punishment, and death certification. The prisoners are categorized by color-coded badges: red for political, green for criminal, black for asocial, purple for Jehovah's Witnesses, pink for homosexuals. This system dehumanizes while allowing bureaucratic precision. Guards know at a glance what category each prisoner belongs to. The camps operate in a legal void. Protective custody orders are issued by the Gestapo without judicial review. No lawyer can challenge them. No court can order release. Families have no legal recourse and often no information about where their relatives are held. And crucially, the system has demonstrated it can scale. The Kristallnacht arrests proved that 30,000 people can be detained suddenly and absorbed into the camps. With expansion, the number could be much higher. The infrastructure is ready, the procedures are tested, the personnel are trained, and with the outbreak of war, the system's purpose is about to transform. September 1st, 1939. Germany invades Poland. World War II begins. The conquest of Poland brings millions of Poles, Jews, resistance fighters, and clergy under Nazi control. The concentration camp system, designed for tens of thousands, suddenly faces managing millions. The original purpose, detaining and terrorizing political opponents within Germany, is no longer sufficient. The system must evolve. Himmler and Heydrich begin developing new approaches. Poland becomes a laboratory for policies that will later extend across occupied Europe. One approach is ghettoization. Urban Jewish populations are concentrated in sealed districts under brutal conditions. Another is mobile killing units, Einsatzgruppen, that follow the army, executing enemies on the spot. But the concentration camps also expand rapidly. New facilities open in occupied Poland: Stutthof near Danzig, Auschwitz, initially for Polish political prisoners, and later Majdanek near Lublin. These camps initially followed the established model: registration, forced labor, brutal conditions, high death rates, but they're larger and more brutal than the German camps. Polish prisoners are treated even more harshly than German ones. Nazi racial ideology considers Poles subhuman. The system is expanding, but its fundamental structure, the administrative apparatus built between 1933 and 1939, remains the same. June 22nd, 1941. Germany invades the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa. This invasion is explicitly genocidal from the start. Hitler issues the Commissar Order. Soviet political officers are to be executed immediately upon capture, outside any military framework. the Wehrmacht is ordered to conduct a war of annihilation. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet POWs are transferred to concentration camps. They're not processed as prisoners of war under Geneva Convention protections. They're classified as political enemies and handed to the SS. At camps like Sachsenhausen and Buchenwald, the SS develops execution procedures specifically for Soviet POWs. They're sorted, registered, and killed, sometimes by shooting, increasingly by other methods. And at Auschwitz in September 1941, an experiment occurs. Soviet POWs and Polish prisoners are locked in basement cells. Zyklon B, a pesticide, is poured through vents. The prisoners die from cyanide poisoning within minutes. The method works. It requires fewer personnel than shooting. It's psychologically easier for the perpetrators. The system is learning how to kill more efficiently. January 20th, 1942. The Wannsee Conference. 15 Nazi officials meet at a villa in Berlin to coordinate the final solution to the Jewish question, the systematic murder of all European Jews. But here's the crucial point. The final solution isn't a new system built from nothing. It's an evolution of the concentration camp system created in 1933. The infrastructure exists, the administrative apparatus, the trained personnel, the procedures for mass detention, the legal void allowing extrajudicial action, the bureaucratic mechanisms for documentation and coordination. What changes is purpose. The camps were designed to detain, terrorize, and exploit. Now some will be transformed to kill on an industrial scale. A new category emerges: extermination camps. Chelmno, Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka, facilities in occupied Poland designed solely for immediate mass murder. But these operate alongside the traditional concentration camps, which continue holding prisoners for forced labor. Auschwitz expands to combine both functions. Some prisoners are registered and exploited for labor, others are gassed immediately upon arrival. By March 1942, the concentration camp system holds approximately 100,000 prisoners. By 1945, millions will pass through its gates. The system Himmler, Heydrich, and Eicke created in 1933, designed to detain political enemies without legal oversight, has become the infrastructure for genocide. But the origin was those early decisions: to operate beyond law, to dehumanize through bureaucratic categorization, to standardize procedures for brutality, to build administrative systems that could scale. The gas chambers of 1942 were built on the administrative foundations laid in 1933. The paperwork came first. The ashes came later. The Nazi concentration camp system didn't emerge spontaneously from German barbarity or ancient hatreds. It was designed, planned, drafted by specific men with specific goals through deliberate processes. It began with a question: how do you neutralize political opposition beyond the constraints of law? The answer was Schutzhaft, protective custody, a legal mechanism inverted and expanded until it created a detention system operating in a legal void. It began with a man, Heinrich Himmler, who studied how other regimes controlled enemies and built an administrative apparatus to institutionalize repression. It began with a place, Dachau, the prototype where Theodor Eicke developed procedures that would be replicated across Europe. It began with a philosophy that certain categories of people, political enemies, racial undesirables, social deviants, could be stripped of legal protections and human dignity through bureaucratic classification. The concentration camp system of 1933 was not the Holocaust. It was designed to detain and terrorize political opponents, not to commit genocide. The camps held thousands, not millions. Prisoners could be released. Death rates, while significant, were not total. But the system created the infrastructure that made the Holocaust operationally possible. The administrative apparatus, the trained personnel willing to view certain humans as categories rather than individuals, the procedures for mass detention without legal oversight, the dehumanization through bureaucratic classification, the standardization that allowed rapid expansion. When Nazi goals radicalized from suppressing opposition to exterminating entire peoples, the machinery already existed. It only required modification, expansion, and redirection of purpose. That's the horrifying lesson of origin. The concentration camp system began not with gas chambers, but with paperwork, detention orders, administrative hierarchies, the suspension of legal protections for enemies of the state, procedures designed to operate beyond judicial review. A journalist at Dachau's announcement in March 1933 might have written a brief story about a detention facility for communist agitators. A family receiving no notification that their father had been arrested might have assumed he'd simply disappeared. A released prisoner warning his neighbors to keep quiet might have seemed paranoid. Each step seemed justified by security concerns, administrative efficiency, or maintaining order. Each step expanded what was possible. Each step proved the system could be replicated. By the time people recognized what they were participating in, the machinery was fully operational and continental in scope. The origin of the Nazi concentration camp system is a story of choices, deliberate, systematic choices by educated men who built a machine designed to operate beyond law, morality, and human compassion. They succeeded. The machine operated for 12 years, destroying millions of lives. And it began with a single camp, a single set of regulations, and a single idea that some people could be stripped of legal protection and detained indefinitely without anyone to stop it. The concentration camps didn't begin as extermination facilities. They began as administrative solutions to political problems. That's how atrocity starts. Not with monsters, but with systems. Not with chaos, but with planning. The origin of the Nazi concentration camp system was bureaucracy weaponized against humanity. And bureaucracy can be created anywhere, by anyone, for any purpose those in power choose. If this story moved you, challenged you, or helped you see the Second World War differently, it would be an honor to have you join our growing community. Subscribing isn't just a click. It's a way to support more powerful stories, more forgotten voices, and more truth from the past. So if you believe these stories matter, hit that subscribe button, and let's keep building this journey together. And don't forget to leave a comment. We read everyone and love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, keep exploring history with Epic War. Keep asking questions. Keep seeking the truth.